Akash, do you have a favorite soap opera?
Appreciate you guys for having me. I am not a big soap opera guy. Not a big daytime TV person.
Yeah, you would think that wouldn't be a discussion here in the middle of it, but apparently that was a hot topic last week. Akash is like, my favorite soap opera is the 49ers.
Jimmy's life's turn. That's what it is.
Akash, what do you think happens with Jimmy Garoppolo?
Despite what Jed York said with Tim Kawakami earlier, which is that they'd be open to keeping him into the season, I think they release him here in the next 8 days. I think August 30th is kind of the unofficial deadline before his cap hit and his guaranteed salary kicks in, and I think they will part ways before then.
Yeah, like the thing that it keeps coming back to me is the price tag. Like if you were talking about $10 million, $8 million, yeah, maybe he gets traded. Maybe if you're the 49ers, you hang on to him for that price. But when you talk about $25 million, in the strangest scenario, even if he came back, he's not staying at $25 million. They would cut him and agree to something else besides the $25 million. That price tag is what, to me, ends all speculation on whether or not he'd stick around.
Right. The staying around part works, given the fact that he hasn't been attending meetings, he hasn't been participating in practices, he effectively isn't a part of the team, and so I just think they both kind of know, what the situation is, and I think the Niners have been holding out hope that a trade would somehow materialize, and I don't think any trade is gonna come to fruition here in the next week, and so ultimately it's gonna end with a release, I imagine.
I do secretly love. But I also secretly love that Jed York is really trying to convince us. Oh yeah, we might keep him. Yeah, sure. He ain't been to one meeting, one practice, nothing. We might keep him.
It's once.
We might keep him and pay him $24 million. Why not? I kind of admire Jed York for that.
I honestly think that's his growth, right? I think he added context and he said, we're going to let Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch handle this. I have no say or anything, but I think, just trying to say the right thing and not turn it into a big headline.
No, for sure. Trey Sermon is making headlines for all the wrong reasons. I asked you, what do you think happens with Jimmy Garoppolo? Well, what do you think happens with Trey Sermon? Roster cuts are coming up next Tuesday, and man, the former third-round pick has not impressed at all.
The running back room is one of the tougher position groups to cut down, just because I think there's so much talent there. Obviously, I think Elijah Mitchell, Jeff Wilson, and Ty Davis Price are locks to make this roster, just given what they've done previously on the team, or in Davis Price's case, just because of where he was drafted. And then it really comes down to the remaining guys. JaMychal Hasty, who I think is a complete back. He can catch balls out of the backfield. He's good in pass protection. He's good as a runner. He's familiar with the system. And then there's Jordan Mason, the undrafted free agent, who has come on and just been an absolute monster, I think, and has a lot of potential. And I would be worried about releasing. I don't think he's going to clear waivers and would land back on the 49ers practice squad. And then there's Trey Sermon, who just hasn't flashed, and I think he had 5 carries for 8 yards on Saturday. Just, didn't look particularly decisive. I think he had a rep where he screwed up pass protection, and I don't know. I know he was a former third-round pick, and I know roster politics kind of play a role in this, but if I had to say, I would probably release Trey Sermon and keep the other backs on the roster, because I think he's probably been the one that hasn't performed at a level like the others.
I agree. That's what I would do if I was John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. He just hasn't performed. And more importantly, he hasn't performed better than the guys that are in front of him, or the other guys in the room. Do you think that John and Kyle would make that move, though? Or would they be caught up on third-round pick. We got to give him an opportunity, even if it means, losing a guy like Jordan Mason or something like that. We got to see this all the way through. Or are they kind of cutthroat in the fact of, hey, I know it's your second year, your second training camp, or whatever the case may be, but these guys are outplaying you. We're going with the young fellas. How do you think they're traditionally would play something like that?
I think they have learned from the DJ Reed situation. And if you remember a couple years ago, they released the slot corner DJ Reed, who they were high on, but I think he was maybe hurt at the time, and they were hoping he would clear waivers and make it back onto injured reserve and then could get healthy and make his way back on the team. And unfortunately, I think Seattle claimed him, and he's ended up, playing well for them the past few years, and I don't think they want a repeat of that situation. And so I do think, similar to what they did with Joe Williams, a former, third or fourth round pick that they traded up for, they released him, I think, well before the end of his rookie contract. And I think they would end up doing something like that with Trey Sermon, especially given the depth of that position. And if they feel like someone like Jordan Mason has a higher ceiling, I think it would be the wise thing to do. And I can certainly see them doing that.
You got any update on Mike McGlinchey and what's going on with him? It seems there's a little bit of an injury concern with him right now.
Definitely concerning. He's not practicing this week. I don't think he's going to play in Thursday's exhibition against Houston. And, I think the question that everyone has is it tied back to the quad injury. When the injury occurred and he had the surgery, it was one of those things where we questioned if he would come back and even play, because it's not an injury that most athletes, especially offensive linemen, come back from. And now he has some knee soreness, which is likely tied to the quad injury. And you're just hoping he can return for the regular season. I think the tackle depth behind McGlinchey and Williams really falls off. I think Colton McKivitz is kind of the next guy up who played well last year in place of Trent Williams in Week 18 in Los Angeles. But I would worry if I were Kyle Shanahan if McKivitz had to start more than just a few games in place of Mike McGlinchey. So we'll see. I know Kyle Shanahan's supposed to meet with the media later this week and hopefully have some positive news on the McGlinchey front. But yeah, definitely a concern there.
Hey, Kosher, there's some other guys that are catching your eyes, kind of like Jordan Mason has. We talked about Danny Gray a lot since his big 76-yard touchdown from Trey Lance. Wide receiver-wise, I've been looking at that group, and they've got so many guys like Gray, like Ray McLeod, Juwan Jennings, the way he performed late in the season last year. Is there anybody that's catching people's eyes on that offensive side of the ball, the playmaker-wise?
The offensive side of the ball, I think, whether it's the wide receivers, whether it's the tight ends, the running backs, it seems like it's fairly solidified in terms of, I think you've got your core guys, obviously, right? Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. You've got the group of running backs. And then in the wide receiver room behind that, just some of the names you mentioned, whether it's Danny Gray, who I think is going to maybe play less snaps than you'd think, but I think he's going to have a higher impact. I think Kyle Shanahan is going to have some specific shot plays specifically for Danny Gray that he's going to call at certain instances in games. And, Trey Lance and Danny Gray are going to have to connect on those plays, and that's where Gray's impact is going to come from. Maybe the volume we'd hope for. But he's going to have just big moments similar to that 76-yard touchdown where you'll realize the impact that he has on the rest of the offense. And honestly, I think the young guys at running back are so impressive, whether it's Ty Davis-Price or Jordan Mason, who you mentioned. I mean, the way TDP ran on Saturday, lowering his shoulder, physical style, breaking tackles. I think he broke 3 tackles. I think Jordan Mason broke 6. Those guys are just physical downhill runners. And as good as Elijah Mitchell was last year, that was an area he struggled with, was just physicality, breaking tackles. He often got nicked and nicked up when, there was contact and missed some time. He played through injuries. And I think with Ty Davis-Price and Jordan Mason, I think the 49ers have just 2 physical backs that they can rely on this season. And hopefully both of them are there on the 53-man roster.
Yeah, I hope so.
Akash, these things can be hard to hear sometimes. Your phone hates you. I just want to tell you that.
You're a transformer.
Either your phone hates you or your phone hates us, but your phone definitely hates someone involved in this conversation, as you did turn into a transformer on several occasions. But we were all able to take your main points there beautifully. And we appreciate your insight as always, Akash. Thank you, my man.
Appreciate it, guys.
Always.